See what I have.
Okay, welcome to the Board of Design Review Board's full Design Review Board's monthly meeting. We have all of our members here, so we have a quorum. I need a motion to approve last month's minutes.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion, a second. All those in favor? Aye. Need a motion to approve this evening's agenda.
Mr. Chair, a point of order for our discussion. You need a motion to amend the agenda to move item
Oh, okay, whatever, yes.
to the
Need a-
top.
Before we approve the agenda, I need a motion to approve. In fact, we're going to move the election of officers to the first item instead of the last.
So moved.
There's a motion, a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now, I have a motion to approve this evening's revised agenda.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we can then get on with the meeting tonight, and I can go home. We're going to elect officers. And the way we do this, we start normally with the chair, and then the chair runs the rest of the meeting and elects the rest of the officers, okay? Anyone have any suggestions or anyone they would like to nominate for chair?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I nominate Richard Newland.
Second.
Motion is second. Anyone else have a nomination? All those in favor, raise your hand so we have an accurate count. I can see who my friends are. I should have said it that way.
Does he abstain from that vote?
Did you hear for himself?
I abstain.
So unseemly.
I'm not sure I should thank you all or, okay, now I can run a meeting. I guess we can do a group of vice chairs or one vice chair at a time, or anyone have any nominations for vice chair? Let's see if we get any.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I nominate Neil Rosenberry.
Without the N would
Yeah.
be good. Roseberry?
Rosenberry.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me.
I'll second that.
Motion a second for Mr. Roseberry. We'll do them one at a time then. All those in favor, raise your hands.
Aye.
Okay. We need 3 of these characters, okay? I'll make a motion, not a motion, I'd like to throw a nomination that Ken Ivan Knuppen,
With a K.
with a K.
I'm seconding that.
Motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And number 3, do we have any nominations? Yes, Mr. Rose?
Mr. Georges for vice chair.
Second.
There's a motion is second. Any other nominations? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Boy, there's a certain sense of familiarity to the officers here.
Hard to find suckers.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
Okay, moving right along with the agenda, the Colts Neck art is the first one, I believe. Yes, it is. Yeah, you bought the artist too?
So much harder to criticize.
Just make sure the little green light is on. Push your button on the thing in front of you there.
We can sit down and do this.
Yeah.
Thank you, dear. I'm losing my voice already.
Well, we've got a kitty up here, so it's
Yeah.
pushing them forward.
So we gave you a little preliminary review of this at a prior meeting, and tonight we are here for approval for the Colts Neck Road underpass project. It is a public art Reston sponsored project, primarily being funded through the Hunter's Woods at Trail's Edge, among other sources, which is obviously the development right next door, which has gone through the design review board process. And Ben Volta is the selected artist. We heard about the process through the Public Art Committee and so forth the last time. So without further ado, we're going to turn it over to Ben to discuss the art and the process.
Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. So, Ben Volta, artist from Philadelphia. Got introduced to Reston through this project, so it was really incredible to learn about your history, to explore the museum, to read stories, to read all about the story of Bob Simon. And what really struck me, I think, really one of the first things I learned about Reston was these 55 miles of pathways. that run through and connect the community. So as an artist, I was really searching for something to jump out, and that was almost one of the first things that jumped out. I took that back to my studio in Philadelphia, and I kind of went through things that speak to me, and I found this, quote from Henry David Thoreau that says, pursue some path, however narrow and crooked, in which you can walk with love and reverence. And I really, this project was planned from the start to work with students at Hunterswood Elementary School, Dogwood Elementary School, and elders at Fellowship House and Hunters Woods at Trails Edge, and Southgate Community Center. So I really saw a way of taking this quote that spoke to me, the fact that these trails jumped out, we needed a starting point. And I really went into these workshops with just a very simple concept. Could we draw, kind of imagining ourselves to be Bob Simon a little bit, like what would be to draw a creative path. So I adapted this quote to be, draw the path, however wide, narrow, straight, jagged, and crooked, curly and winding, in which we can all look at and enjoy with love and reverence. So that was really the inspiration I gave to the students to draw from and start to create imagery from. You can see the short description I wrote. The public art for Colts Neck Road underpass will combine hundreds of drawings created by an intergenerational team of Restonians to create a colorful connector that reverberates collective energy and rhythm. So what does that look like, and how do we go about it? We have how we go about it down. What it looks like is still, it's being made with the students. It's being made with the elders. The design direction, but here's some details, right? So the design direction, the design elements and the color of the artwork is being developed with the elders from Hunter Woods Fellowship House and over 800 students from Hunters Woods and Dogwood Elementary Schools and Southgate Community Center. The drawings created by participants will help determine what the artwork looks and feels like. The design renderings in this proposal are rough sketches and not the final artwork. The renderings are intended to present a starting point and design direction. The artwork renderings repeat the same 10 drawings over and over again. For effect, we anticipate using 600 to 1,000 original designs to construct the final artwork. The artwork will have over 30 colors, and each color used in the artwork will be chosen by groups of 15 to 20 participants. The colors chosen will help participants find and identify their drawings in the final artwork. In the final design, I will attempt to stay as close to the participant color choices as possible, but we may need to change the value and saturation of these choices to make everything work together or in response to community feedback. Identifying a title for the artwork will be a challenge that we've been giving the participants in the workshops. So you can see we've been working with, I've said it already, but we've been working with 3 core groups. The entire 5th grade at Dogwood Elementary School on April 30th and May 1st. The 4th, 5th, and 6th grade at Hunter Woods Elementary on June 3rd and June 4th. The elders at Fellowship House at Hunters Woods on June 18th, today, we did that this morning. And elders and youth at Hunter Woods at Trails Edge on June 29th. You can see there's some pictures of some of those workshops to walk you through the workshop draft. The introduction, I began with introduction to past murals and public art projects, public art Reston, and the public art for Colts Neck underpass project and site. We began by choosing a color. So students worked in groups to choose a color from paint samples. They then began a drawing exercise inspired by that quote, where they used a black Sharpie marker on 7 by 16 inch paper, and the students created drawings that represent a creative path. Participants, I don't need to talk about that. Artwork design students will develop, they drew 4 drawings, they chose with pencil, and they chose their best one with a Sharpie to choose to include with the artwork. We then had them be inspired by a Robert Simon quote, and I asked them to list everything you have seen or read about that's essential to your life, and then add everything else you can think of that makes living in Reston stimulating and worthwhile. And Bob Simon did this on a yellow pad, so I gave them all little pieces of yellow pad to do this. So we have this running list that that's where we hope the title's going to come from. We have this running list of all the thoughts that kids have said, and of course some of them are repetitive, but every time we have a new one, we're writing it down as we're scanning and making these and bringing these drawings into the computer. So of course we then had the students also take a piece of tracing paper and color their drawings. We're going to take that back to the studio and see if anything new comes from that process as well. But what we're really going to use is these the Sharpie markers that they made. So you can see some examples when you look at that of some of the paths that the students are making. Completely incredible. You can see on the bottom, if you go forward one more, and I'm imagining I can go forward with this. That was like original concept of starting to put the drawings together. We expect it to be, much better because these are just using, quick sketches that we made in the studio. You can see images of Hunter's Woods on all the students working together. We had 150 kids in the cafeteria at once. They didn't want to stop drawing. It was some incredible workshops. You can see them writing about Reston on the yellow pads on the imagery as well. So the artwork material that we're going to use, this is going to be, it's basically a high resolution pigment print, which is like a fancy word for a fine art printer that prints on, it's called polytab, which is, it's also called mural cloth. So it's going to be printed on mural cloth and adhered with kind of a acrylic gel, which is a mixture of paint and plexiglass, to what's called an Alumilite panel. And I can pass these around. And then Alumilite panel, or a Megabond, it's a brand of Alumilite, is aluminum with a plastic core, and it's coated with a acrylic UV protective top coat and an MSA varnish on top of that too. So this panel is very it's very durable, and it really adheres. It becomes one with the wall that it's attached to. So it'll be bolted to the wall with tiny hardwares, and it really becomes, as long as nothing can get behind it, it becomes basically, it takes on the properties of the concrete wall, so it becomes incredibly durable. It's also, one of the things about this is it's removable, so if it is damaged, it's something that can be replaced fairly easily. We have the challenge of the underpass with water coming through from the back, and that's why we couldn't paint directly on the wall or adhere this cloth directly onto the wall.
How big is
Because
each panel?
This will stop the.
How big is
the
each
water.
panel?
Each panel will be around 4 feet by 5 feet.
Okay.
This is some renderings. Of course, this is not what it's going to look like, but it was that initial, we need to show a design direction. We're going to wrap this with the drawings made with the kids to create some sort of abstraction that kind of pulls all of these paths together.
Can I add one thing?
Of course, yeah.
So in some of the art committee meetings, we had Mike McNamara from our maintenance department there, and, one of our interests was the durability of it. So we did some ballistics testing. Literally, not in Reston, we didn't do that. But we did some ballistics testing. Some staff, which remain unnamed, but it is possible to shoot a 22 through it or a 30 caliber. But beyond that, if it's flat against a firm backdrop, it's pretty dang tough. That's their report out.
And there's examples of this being used in Philadelphia for many years, and it's standing up to, it's kind of a standard with the Mural Arts Philadelphia and Public Art in Philadelphia. If it's adhered, we have seen it, if it's adhered to that backing where it's a wood structure or something, that's when it doesn't hold up so well. But when it's adhered to something like a concrete retaining wall, it's pretty damn tough.
Are the edges sealed where the panels will meet each other, that they can't, they can't get in there, or the magic marker won't soak into that particular area? I understand the surfaces are pretty impervious, but what about where they butt together? Is
They should
it
be-
a final coat overall, or is it just each panel?
They should be pretty tightly, we'll install them, but they're very tight. If needed, you could use the gel or like a high-grade caulk, but we really like to avoid it if possible. So we're going to do some
Might make it
tests.
real impossible to get one off if you
That's
need to
the
repair
problem
it.
too. So we want to make it as tight, kind of cutting them and fitting them on site.
Okay.
So we'll have them pretty close, but we'll be expected to kind of make some close fittings when we come to install.
One of your renderings showed some LED lights in the tunnel. Is that going to be part of this, or that's an option? So one, yeah, there.
Right now it's an option, but we wanted to present that to you because we think that, there is lighting. You can see the existing fixtures in there, which currently we're working with Atlantic Realty to get that repowered because they had to cut it off with construction. But we think additional lighting would be worthwhile. And so we've been investigating what that application might be. But LED strips are one of the, they're clean, and if they can be done in a somewhat reinforced housing, we think that would be good.
Most of the existing lighting is not much more than security, safety anyhow.
Correct.
I don't think it would really do much for the art, what's currently out there.
Yeah.
This would be much better.
I mean, I think if you're asking us to approve the lighting, we can certainly discuss that. I like the way that looks. I don't know if you've timed one of our seniors, how long it takes them to go from one end of the tunnel to the other, but that might be some good information to have.
Yeah.
Because they might be in there for a while, particularly if they're looking at the art. So
Yeah.
they need to see it.
Yeah.
I think it's stunning, is what I think. And I think it's, you know, you take something as mundane as a tunnel, and it's almost too bad that tunnels weren't designed with more fun in mind. They're very utilitarian. So you got to do something to them that would help, and I think that's what this does. I think it's exciting, and hope we can get around to doing all this. How many tunnels do we have in Reston?
26.
Oh, I didn't realize that many. Okay.
Yeah.
You're going to be busy for a while.
Hopefully. Well, never one to let Richard compliment something without voicing some concern. I've never fully enjoyed that we use our infrastructure for our artwork. Decorating up infrastructure, I just think it has its limits, and I know some of these, we started down that path because the graffiti was happening anyway, and, you know, let's turn that into something positive. You know, nature is what the trails are about. They're not like trails to visit public art so much as they are to get away from all of DC and all of the metro area, get away to nature. You quote Thoreau, and, you know, it's the return to nature that Thoreau is all about, which Reston is pretty good at. 30 colors, when I look at the representations, I was wondering, could I count 30 colors there? I don't think I could. It looks more like 6 or 7. I wonder what 30 is going to do, and I hope you do take just enough license to sort of, you know, maybe not make it form and then color. If they're both infinitely infinitely open to options, you know, we'll see what that produces. That's where I think certainly your ability to shape it and to figure out how to layer it, perhaps. Because, you know, I just don't know how representative that image is of what this is going to end up being. And I'll be curious. It's definitely very interactive and very spontaneous, and I mean, it needs to have studied spontaneity. How's that? Before I think it's necessarily going to be fully successful, and the color, you know, in the end, really just kind of needs to work, or else it could maybe not be so enjoyable. Okay, that's all I got to say.
Yeah, my one question was, this is asking for final approval, but then it sounds like the design is actually not finalized yet. Is there any chance that it comes back to us when you actually have that final, or this is, we're approving a conceptual as the final before the final's done? Is my understanding correct?
That's the request.
Well, yeah, so
Because it sounds like, I mean, he's gonna be able to
Because
put
it's
this up on a full screen, I would assume. You're gonna have to photo print everything, so you're gonna have a full look of what this mural looks like with, you know, if it does end up being 30 colors or whatever. It seems like it would be possible for us to look at it
I think
prior.
the only way to do that is going to be to have them present a full-scale model, which is probably going to look like that. I'm kind of kidding you, but
It'll look,
it's art. I don't think what you're showing us is a representation of roughly how it's going to look.
But it's art, but it's gonna be on a computer, so you're gonna be able to see. It's not like he's, you know, they're up there making all the hand drawings. I don't know, that's just, to me, before I'm gonna print something, he's gonna compose it, he's gonna make it look nice. So there theoretically would be a more final rendering rather than a conceptual with only 6 colors when they're proposing potentially up to 30, like Neil was saying. So that's all my question is kind of what I don't know, so it's just my
do
question.
you all meet in August?
Yes.
Yep. We're not meeting again until December.
Full board meeting every month until December.
Yeah.
Now, I think you guys were here before. I think that was kind of conceptual. This is way further down the road, and I don't have a problem approving this. I think to make you guys come back, this is kind of silly. Let's go on, my opinion, go on and get it done. I know it's not going to look exactly like that, But again, it's art, it's just, of course, it's gonna change.
It's in the eye of the beholder anyhow, so.
Yeah.
Well, what have we done in the past, though? I'm going both ways on this. We're not gonna micromanage. I don't think we're gonna micromanage this if you come back, but we usually do see the final thing before it's approved. So I kind of gone 100 and, was that 360? I've gone 360 on it and think maybe we should, because that's what we usually do, see whatever it is and give it a formal final.
Well, if you say that's what it's gonna look like and it's a little bit different,
It may not look anything like that.
It's going to be quite different. So it's the idea, but then it's a design direction. So it's the idea that you don't want to, I don't know what it looks like because we still are collecting the drawings. So you want to have enough to say, we're going in this direction, but I'm hoping to be surprised. And the whole project is growing as we make it. So I'm kind of along for the ride as well. There's only so much, like I'll have those designs and there's so much I can do. But I also have a design, if you go to my website and look at how this has worked out multiple times in the past, it comes together and is resolved quite a bit more than I'm showing you here.
Because you're
So-
here in the first place, because people in Reston will say to me
Yeah,
in public, why did you approve that? I guess I
Yeah.
kind of want to see what it's going to look like.
I'm,
And I don't have any doubt that it's going to be fine and I'll be, fully conversant, but we don't typically just end up saying, okay, go, and whatever it looks like is going to be fine.
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it will be, but.
And that's,
May I?
and you'll see in the proposal, I wrote like colors to be approved by the community and things like that. So there is a certain sense of, I'm really deferring to Anne. like,
Well, I guess-
And the timeline and things
Yeah,
like
so,
that.
so as far as your timeline,
I'm
you've
okay
got
with anything.
June 29th is the last
Workshop.
workshop. How long beyond that do you think it would be before you would have sort of, a more finite design direction?
So we're hoping that before the end of July, we have that design pretty close to being done, if not complete. As we're working with 800 to 1,000 drawings, that turns into crunching a lot of digital images, and I am dependent upon my assistants and our other project loads. So
well, our next full board is
I think
July 16th.
What's that?
Our next full board is July 16th. That's like 2 weeks after you're gonna have whatever it was we
Yeah.
just said.
I think I would have more, and I'm prepared to present then, if you would like me to.
Or
Let me
we
ask
could
you
just
this,
look
Ben.
at it.
Yeah.
I know we're looking
There's-
at
the email's
a
fine,
September
I think.
installation, roughly.
Yeah.
If it were to be, when were you generally planning on, starting, getting the panels, kind of the final panels done to meet that September deadline?
I was hoping in August.
August?
So this maybe the second week of August to be hitting the ground with fabrication. I'm away for 2 weeks in July. I think that if you would like me to come to the July 16th meeting, I could have it far enough along that you would know, like, this is what it's gonna feel like. So even if everything isn't worked out, you'd have a shot of the one entrance, you'd have a shot down the tunnel, and you'd be able to have
You'd have
it
the
a little
color
bit
palette
clearer.
by
We'd
that
have the
time.
color palette or some options as far as pushing it in one way or the other. I'm very collaborative with these things, so it's not like ideas kind of being thrown out there and pushed one way or the other is somewhat exciting for me, so.
I mean, I'm happy
another
to
step
give
along
you
the way.
free license to go on with your art, but
I agree.
I guess I'm not the only
I love the
person
free
up here,
license
so
too.
I can't imagine you're gonna come in with one of these panels and we're gonna say, oh, if you put a little more blue in it, I'd like it better. I don't think that's gonna happen.
I've been there many times when it happens, so.
If you wanna come back on July 16th, then that's fine.
I would,
I don't think it's necessary.
I don't think it's, personally, I kind of want to be surprised. I think the fact that you have involved the community, the kids, the seniors, point of order?
No.
Oh, thank you. Get next. Okay, the fact that you've involved the community, I kind of want to be surprised and see what happens. I've been watching your representative work on the screen. I think it's great. I do think infrastructure is a great place, particularly this, to use public art. I do think Thoreau would have even liked this walk, so.
There you go.
Touche.
And Thoreau said nature was part of the city too.
Yes,
so.
exactly. So where does nature interact with the city? I think
Yeah.
this is a great opportunity to showcase public art. And the kids are all gonna bring their families there and say, I took part of this. Will there be any kind of an interpretive plaque or anything to talk about the story?
Yeah.
Where will that be put, and have you thought about that? And I'm not trying to, it would be nice to be able to interpret the art for someone that's passing by. And for someone who may even be blind, maybe there's Braille on the plaque describing what they're walking through.
Yeah,
And someone who's in a wheelchair is low enough to where they can experience it.
yeah. Great suggestions.
Mr. Chairman, I make a suggestion? They could email, and you could do via unanimous written consent. So email to the DRB rather than them coming back, if you're that confident that they're,
Maybe we can also have a motion tonight that we can approve it as it is, and if we get some people that vote against it, okay, or not. Is there a motion perhaps?
Everybody else didn't comment either.
Well, I think I could make a motion and we could then have discussion.
Yeah.
I would like to move that we approve the artwork as presented to us. I'm happy to add a stipulation that we could see via email any final renderings for final opinions.
Second Ken's motion.
Okay, it's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I just want to say that to me, it's precedent setting, and while I don't, again, have any great thought that this is gonna surprise me at the end and make me want to vote no at the last minute, I don't know that I would feel like that about everything that comes in here. And are we going to say that we're approved? I mean, it's kind of weird. I don't know, I said from the start, I don't know what the design review board is doing with public art exactly. So just make that known.
Yeah, well, the process we had before, the ceramic one over off of Colts Neck, came in with a similar presentation and we just approved it. I don't think the final product was exactly like what we saw because stuff did move around and so on. So, I mean, I think if we're okay with the fact they're gonna show us through emails, photographs of your progress, that's what is suggested in the motion, that we'll see what it's gonna look like and we have an option at that point to say, oh, no, 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 no.
Well, is that kind of late once we've approved?
Yeah, I've got
Yeah.
a clarification. You have one person opposed, and I'm happy unanimous, so if that's a concern going forward, we might need to think about it.
Why is that a concern?
Because if we don't oppose this, then we're gonna have to put it into another meeting, we may not have time before the July meeting, we're gonna need notification.
I don't think that's what they're saying.
No, my motion is that we approve tonight and that we give the option
And we just said
for them to
final.
share final renderings.
Okay.
I don't think you can do a conditional approval. I think it's approved with a courtesy to the DRB.
Yeah, that was my
I think
intent.
that's what he's saying, yeah. My other comment is, as Ari addressed, I mean, in every picture, you can see the drainage is terrible at this tunnel. Is there anything, money spent towards upgrading with some sort of French drain, catching anything coming in, or, I mean, it's erosion all the time in that tunnel, so I'm just curious, has there been any thought to that, so this can actually be enjoyed?
Right, yeah, so we do, and with this tunnel for the last 2 years, it's been
Next to a
immediately
construction
adjacent
site,
to a
yeah.
major construction site, so it's been, it's been closed, so it's been problematic. So we do address that on a regular basis. Some of them, I mean, there's one over under South Lakes by the corner of Lake Thoreau, it's in a low spot, and there is nowhere for the,
You'd have to pump
there's
it.
nowhere for the water to go, so it's just a regular maintenance activity after rainstorms to get in there and shovel it out. I mean, but we worked with the Montessori school, to reduce the erosion on their property, so we do that on a regular basis. The difficulty with going in there and like carving out French drains is that typically this is the lowest spot
There's nowhere
on
behind.
any site, and there's nowhere for the water to go.
Are these panels going right to the ground, or are they gonna be like a little?
So about 6 inches.
Okay. So there'll be kind of room for that muck to kind of, if there is some muck
There is
to.
Hopefully they're not 6 inches.
You look at some of those pictures, there's sometimes a good 2-3 inches.
Part of the
Yeah.
experience.
Well, also, we didn't mention, we're gonna paint the walls, the ceiling as well, so, of the tunnel, so.
My bigger concern would be the algae and so forth. But I'm assuming this material might be impervious to something like that.
The material is, the paint will have to be up,
Yeah.
upkept, and we'll have the very high, as high as quality as we can get, sure.
I had one question for clarification. Does your motion include the lights that they showed?
That's a good point. I would approve the lights as presented as well.
Any further discussion? Just
I would like perhaps just to address your question about signage. We have discussed it, except we have not, decided or on the location, but that's definitely planned. And if I may just address the point about the underpasses and are they places suitable for art? I must say that the Public Art Master Plan for Reston and the RA board, was part of the many founding partner organizations that approved that document, identifies the underpasses of Reston as places for public art. And I would like just to add one last point, that as part of Ben's process in engaging the community, he really asked for input from, people about when you look at the underpass without, with the bare walls and how people react to it. And I think that in general, when people are presented with options to improve them, visually speaking, that there's certainly a very positive response.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Well done.
You're good.
That's nice lighting, man.
I think it's just LED.
Yeah, that would go a long way.
I have to pause for a moment because I'm talking.
Okay. Can we leave the room? Just by way of introducing this, let's see, came to our panel, Nick?
I thought it was
Or was I
Was it
subbing our
ours?
panel?
Okay. I was there for it. I thought it was you though. That's when I was subbing on, so it wasn't.
I was definitely there.
Okay, so it was our panel.
It was our panel, okay, that's what I thought.
They all blend together.
I mean, basically, if you see from the photographs,
I was confused because Charlie was involved with this and he's on my panel, but he did this outside of that.
I wrote the original complaint.
You knew about it. I got it. That fills in the blanks.
just so the other members, since it's been referred here, is everything we did before moot? Or do we all have to?
I think it's a new hearing. It's not an appeal.
No, it's not an appeal,
Why is it not an appeal?
because it's not an appeal. If it gets bumped up to the full board, it's a whole new application, so that's what I'm gonna ask in a second.
Or refer, not member, but not application.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
no
this,
decision.
Mario, this is a whole new deal, right? So
Yeah.
all of us can participate. So-
Yes.
Okay, just, I'll synopsize what happened before. The applicant has what you saw in that, well, got your little,
Charlie has to abstain.
it'll be here any minute, you'll see it any minute.
Charlie,
has to abstain.
Charlie does not have to abstain from
Charlie
discussion.
has to abstain.
Oh, he has to abstain.
I have to abstain from both,
Yeah.
not discussion.
Yes.
And where we ended up with this in our panel, that was Bruce, Nick, and myself, there are like 3 different layers of this fabricated, or this grass, or whatever the heck it is, astroturf. And we ended up asking the applicant to shrink the size of it down to where it's just the bit in the center. All the surrounding green, there are a couple different layers or colors of green around it, to get rid of all of those, to plant, I forget what kind of plant, Nick, do you remember? Some kind of bushes and stuff.
American Holly, maybe?
Yeah, it was to plant stuff
American
around it so that the house next door couldn't see it anymore, and that's where we ended up with, and that's why we approved it. Felt that that was appropriate. In my mind, it was no different than someone that puts a play structure in their backyard, which is probably even more visual. That if you look at the picture up there on the screen, all the centerpiece is all that we approved. Okay.
Okay. Richard?
Yes, sir.
Charlie's photos.
These are some of my photos. The original issue was prior to any of this being built, so that my original one had nothing to do with any of this. It was because the property had been clear cut and it was not submitted to the board for approval. In fact, at the time, we didn't even know where the property line happens to fall. It all happens to be his property, as it turns out, but at the time, because of the nature of the property lines in Reston, nobody really knows where they're at. So this is, the path that's shown is part of the Turquoise Trail, one of the busiest paths in South Reston. And my contention is that per our design guidelines, we do not allow exterior carpet except in very precise enclosed locations that cannot be seen by, we do it in patios that are surrounded by full fence. It's very specific in our guidelines that the carpet should be located on flat, stable, constructed surfaces, not on the ground. The carpet should be neutral color, brown, gray, or tan. It's not allowed to be located in the front of the property. It has to be with a privacy fence or solid ground. Well, this is not in the front, but it's more than visible for the public because it's right on the public path. I think that it was an error to approve it. I don't think if this had come before the board prior to installation, it would have been improved to put this massive amount of carpet in public view.
Point of order, as this is essentially a new hearing, generally the way our hearing follows is the applicant applies and then we have discussion.
That's true. I was just trying to synopsize what we had. And go ahead. Add anything you want to add to what was said. It is
Yes,
a new
Please,
review.
I'm sorry.
Could you turn on your microphone? Just push the button. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so, all right, I'll just read my narrative, and I brought some other pictures to show you what I've done since the last meeting to mitigate any of the comments that people had, and then I'll just go from there. So basically, I'm here to seek approval for a patio in our backyard. And our property is extremely private in nature. It's at the end of a cul-de-sac. When we bought this house 2 years ago, we wanted to turn the backyard into an area that we could actually play in. When we got the house, the backyard in question was full of plants and actually had an abandoned frog pond in the middle of it. There was a ton of mosquitoes, bugs, and it was overrun with weeds and wasn't usable at all. Further, we had deers and other animals eating hosta and potentially bringing ticks and other problems to that area that we wanted to utilize as a family. I have 2 young children. Our plot in particular is at the bottom of a humongous hill. So there's a ton of water that runs down through our patio area down to the county drain. Our property gets hit really hard with water when it rains because all the water comes down from Sweet Bay and the surrounding properties and it just washes right through our backyard. There's nothing we can do about that. It's really unlikely to grow grass and have it sustain this environment. So we decided a patio would be better fit and last longer and be usable and not saturated in water all the time. Last fall, there was an incredible amount of water. This was causing a lot of puddling and water to sit against our sunroom, and I was just afraid of damage, so I needed to fix the problem fast. Our solution was to level the ground. We added gravel, so it's very firm ground. We packed it down, and we created a proper slope and drainage so the water can flow through our property and not just sit in that area right in the stone. We installed a French drain by the sunroom to improve the flow even more, and we even improved the drainage by our other neighbor and built up the post with more 6x6s to get the water even further away from our backyard. So we did everything we could to try to improve the drainage on that side. I followed, to my knowledge, the DRB guidelines to change the space into a patio and assumed I didn't need approval. This patio comes off an already existing patio and greatly improves the drainage and usability of our backyard. Further, we planted 4 trees in between our neighbor and between the properties 4 dogwoods in order to mitigate this because I'm not allowed to build a fence, which is fine. I'm fine with trees. And I understand from our last meeting this is a better approach than a large fence, and we're open to it. So I went ahead and just bought 4 huge trees and planted them on that side. We look forward to these trees growing and maturing and creating a natural border. Frankly, we use this patio each and every day. It's the centerpiece of our house and my work-life balance. I own a small business named Reston, ironically, and I fully embrace the work-life balance that Bob Simon preached. I got to know him pretty well before he died. We also own a townhouse near South Lakes we rent out, and we're full Restonians. All of our kids went to Lang Preschool. My wife works at South Lakes High School. My daughter goes to Hunters Woods, so the previous project was very interesting. Our son Matthew is an avid golfer who's had some amazing success at his young age, and he plays on the green every day, and he loves it. So it's very important to our family. And our neighbors, the Lawrences, have actually gotten into golf as a result of the patio and playing with their children, and it's a beautiful thing getting to see kids get into golf. And they now take golf classes at Reston National, and both their children have shown interest towards it, and it's a wonderful benefit. They've all become fast friends. Further, we've had family gatherings back there. It's been a huge success. It's a wonderful area to hang out. It's extremely usable. I understand from the guidelines, one thing we could address is building up some fill dirt because the fall off is too large. So in a patio, I guess you're supposed to have 6 inches of fall off instead of more. So, you know, I understand that perhaps I could add more fill dirt up into the wall so that it, you know, I guess is less of a drop off for the patio if the board thinks that's appropriate. And also, I mean, if it really comes to it, we can plant more trees and just sort of block off the view from the patio, but frankly, that'd be a shame. I love interacting with our neighbors and community, and people that come by talk about it all the time, and I've had people come off and come hang out, and I've met all sorts of Restonians, and I don't know if you guys have gotten like a lot of complaints, or there's been just one complaint, but we've had many acquaintances and many other families walking by, start random conversations, inquire about junior golf, and are just friendly in general. And so, you know, if you guys think that the idea is to, you know, board it off and shut it all out from everybody, then that's what we gotta do. So I hope for your approval.
Thank you. Any questions? Bruce, thoughts, comments?
Trying to get to see the picture where the trees were planted and just want to make sure the most recent.
The trees that are planted? How about on that very, on your original application?
No, because I planted them since the last meeting. You guys told me to plant trees, so I put
So
trees.
none of the photos you provided tonight have it?
You might be able to see it if you get the one angle. Let me see. There's a video in there too that shows, yeah, well, that's what it used to be.
Look at the dates.
Yeah, look at the date. I've already
31.
gone through all the 2019 for there's
Oh,
5.
those are 2018.
Here's 6/1.
Yeah, I mean, the runoff to Talbot ones, yeah, that's a good one.
I can't tell when they are until I open them. Yeah.
It's the other side, yeah, but, the runoff to Talbot ones really shows a video of the water, of basically how bad it is and how, like, I mean, I guess I understand, but the recommendation was mulch, and mulch, you just wash it all away, it's not gonna work, so, you know, there's drainage under there, and there's a lot of gravel, and it drains all down the hill, and it just goes away, and there are many bug problems, and people hang out there all the time, and, I just don't get it.
How about your photos?
There were no trees, as you can see in mine, there were no trees that blocked it from the path. My concern was not for the neighbors. If the neighbors like it, that's good. But the rest of the public, it's a public path. And personally, you know, it's a great idea. I just think it should have been done out of natural grass and not carpet. My concern is not that there's a putting green, putting green's great. I just, and, you know, looks like, but it should have been done out of natural material and not a large area of carpet, which we normally we don't allow. I mean, since I've been, we've had a lot of it removed from front yards and such.
I have a question about carpet. So when you read earlier the colors that are acceptable, or the examples it gave, you said
Well, it said
brown, gray, or tan? So
the
not even,
indoor,
not even green?
Just to interject.
This is where it's
there's no gu-
enclosed
There's
by
no
a
design
fence.
guideline for artificial outdoor putting green.
Right.
no,
Well, that's-
but this is talking about it, if it should be enclosed and not visible from the public.
And you're reading from what design guideline?
Carpet, indoor, outdoor, year-round, single-family housing.
I mean, this is one of those cases where we have something that really doesn't fit any design guideline.
Right, and I'm not opposed to the look, I just think it should have been done out of natural material, because that's Reston.
To me, it's a matter of size and screening, and just like any backyard. If this were a swimming pool instead of a green, putting green, or if this were a paved terrace, it would be the same thing. Is it is it appropriately sized for the scale of the backyard? And is it properly screened? To me, it looks big, but I'm having a hard time getting a sense of dimension. There's some dimensions in the approval letter, 46 by 20, but I don't have any sense of how small it gets if we.
Well, at the time those pictures were taken, the perimeter hadn't been removed like recommended. So it will shrink down if the perimeter is removed.
How
as
big is the
recommended.
current? artificial part.
That's what it looks like, right?
What, how big is that?
The middle is 28 by 20, and then the outside's like 100 square feet.
So 28 by 20, I mean, you know, if you were paving your backyard, we would probably say that's a little big. I mean, it's all very subjective, of course. If it were a swimming pool, it would probably be just fine.
I mean, the space just lends itself to it perfectly, so, you know, it's a patio. I'm gonna put in a bunch of gravel, and I packed it down, and I got the grade away from the house, and I improved all the drainage, and it's infinitely more usable, and I don't know. That's not work-life balance. I don't know.
When you say patio, are you referring to the putting green as well?
Yeah, that's a patio.
Okay, no,
Yep.
okay, I just wanna make sure we're talking about the same thing, so.
So did I understand you to say that it has not been reduced to the size that the engine?
Well, the outer part's been removed, the opinion said to
No,
remove
he
additional.
just said it still looks like that, right?
No, it's got grass around it.
You didn't take out, like, one of the things we asked you to do is to remove the outermost portion of the carpet be completely removed and 2 feet.
It's a new point at this point, you know.
No, but I'm just saying, this is what,
To be fair,
I'm
you
repeating
guys-
what I said before, so you didn't do what we asked you to
Well,
do.
no, but to be fair to you, the last meeting, like, you guys barely had any time, like, I felt bad, there were like 10 things on the docket, and like, I knew it was here, and just out of nowhere, she was complaining about the lights. I took down all the lights, I sacrificed that, I did all the 9 maintenance things, I spent $5,000 on new shutters, like, power washing my house, I've done everything I could possibly do, like, I don't know what you guys want to do.
So the picture that we saw earlier was still artificial grass. You had a picture up earlier, it looked to me like you planted grass or solid.
No,
It's
Yeah,
artificial.
there is, yeah, so that area in between the drainage and that, I did put some grass in there to try to, like, just fill it in, and
So-
now it just all looks green.
What are we reviewing?
Yeah.
Grass.
Both sides inside the patio are still artificial.
There also no printouts in front of you with pictures I can supply to me just to do anything else.
There's essentially-
For those, if you wish, and do those and introduce.
Three layers of different color artificial turf.
Charlie, I understand what you mean too about the natural grass, but it just won't.
Yeah, and then,
It's really hard, man, it won't grow, you know.
yeah, I understand.
I'm not a
I just,
superintendent.
personal recommendation would be, trees planted to break up the view.
Let me hear what they have. Where you planted the, tree, where did you plant the new trees? I was just curious where the
Whoop,
neighboring
went away.
houses
Your
that was.
photo right here, is this what it looks like right now? Is that what it looks like right now, like that?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Well, you found that picture. So the retaining wall was there, correct?
Yeah.
Because from what I could tell on the plat, the retaining wall actually goes half off your property.
The plat's all wrong.
Yeah, the plant's all right. Like, nothing's right in Reston.
Okay, so right here, what I did is I dug all this up also and put in grass, so it just looks like all grass. And I understand this isn't real grass, but this isn't the part that gets traffic. People walk around and hang out here all the time. What it is, I put 4 trees over here in between our properties so that they'll grow up and block the view for whatever reason, just because it is what it is. So now this is all grass, this is grass, and then there is a little bit of artificial. And what happens is the water comes down, and I built this up so the water goes down there, the water comes down here, and there's drainage here, so the water goes down and away from our property instead of just sitting in a big hole and just causing problems.
That's good.
Mr. Chair, would you point out what is real grass and what is not in that picture?
Yeah, this is real grass, and there's real grass in here now, and then this is this is artificial, and then this is artificial.
Okay, thank you.
Bruce, you done? Ken, any other comments?
Very good, yours.
Oh, yes. That is it. Richard. My concern was view from the path, if proper screening plants were installed.
Let's keep going around here. Ken?
it's a, you know, if you were to, putting the prior application to the side, I wanted to stay focused on it, but this is a brand new application, so I'm looking at that, seeing if I would approve it. With the proper screening, maybe some additional screening, I think that would be fine. It's, where, maybe along the pathway where Charlie is suggesting, but in general, I'm fine with it. I might tidy it up a little bit better along the edges to make it a little more natural. There's some sections it looks like you did lay out a carpet and just forgot to finish it, but that's just a judgment call. So I'm fine.
Nick?
Yeah, I'm still okay with what we kind of talked about, what we approved previously, or is that not?
No, you have to say it again.
Yeah.
I think the smaller scale of it, where we suggested removing the outer layer, making that look natural, is that brown hardwood bark mulch, is it stone, is it some other treatment, was going to be the way to scale that down and make that inner layer appropriate. And I don't have a problem with how it's screened, because I was comparing it to, if it was a play structure, that's not possible to screen, but this is kind of there as an amenity feature. So if it did reduce in scale to that inner green part, I think it's fine as is, but I still, you know, support what we approved back in April with the outer green being removed.
So, as I said earlier, I think it's a matter of scale, and to me, too large of a percentage of your backyard is now an artificial carpet. I think the putting green itself, even the putting green itself, borders on being too much artificial carpet. When you add the perimeter areas, it definitely takes it into the realm that's out of step with Reston. Setting precedent for major percentages of yards to be carpet is not anything Reston-like, in my opinion. I think this started with, I don't want to call it clear cutting, but the backyard is noticeably devoid of trees in the first place, and then the artificial carpet, that's redundant, isn't it? The carpet on top of that is not Reston-like, in my opinion. I think if you were to remove all of the carpet beyond the quote fringe of the putting green, perhaps even the fringe itself, and introduce some sort of natural landscape, if mulch won't hold it, it could be vegetated. In fact, I would encourage it to be vegetated with some shade-loving plants. I think that's the way to return this and let you still have a large putting green in your backyard. But the combination of the perimeter with the putting green is too much, in my opinion.
Jason?
I don't have an overall issue with it. My main concern actually was the floodlights that were removed, and somehow mitigating the golf ball fiasco that's going on between the properties and just solving that. I would say, to the point of the view from the path, I don't think it's going to take a lot. I think you could easily soften the edges of the wall and the view from the path with some of the landscape treatments Neil was talking about. But I don't personally think, I'm not bothered by the size. I would like to see some more trees here, because that canopy is going to go away someday. But I think just perennials and shrubs would be a good way to
I
solve
should
it.
say too, like, we put in like 16 shrubs since like it happened. Like, we put in a bunch of, like, over by this tree right here, we put in like 6 azaleas right here. And then I put in 4 azaleas and hydrangeas over on that, and then there's other planters right there. And I planted 4 trees there. So I planted at least 16 plants since the meeting. I mean, if you want, I'll put more plants here. But frankly, I think it's awesome when people go by and they have kids and they say,
No, I think there's a way to soften it, not necessarily completely put a privacy screen up,
Yeah.
but it's soften it and you still have views.
yeah, I don't want to shut it off with a fence. It's not.
You mentioned you couldn't build a fence or something?
I said with my other neighbor, I was like, I put a big fence up, but I don't think you guys like fences, you want natural.
You could do fences.
Oh, okay.
There's
Yeah, alright.
pretty easily.
Okay.
Mike, doesn't matter what, like, you can do.
So just to be clear, the security lights have been,
Yep.
you're taking those out of the application, basically?
Yeah, they're
We're
out.
not, okay. Yeah, I mean, and then the other thing, I would say just screen it from the path. I would say also just get an updated plat to make, I don't understand where your property line is, where it's not.
Yeah.
And where could technically even plant trees unless you're gonna be planting them on Reston
Yeah.
property. So
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know if your property
The
line is right
wall
on
is
the back.
quite a ways from the path.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, but where, I mean, according to the plat I'm looking at, there's a straight across line, and that wall is traversing it, so my point of
Yeah,
reference
that's
is
all.
zero, so I have no idea if we're asking you to put screening on RA property, which
Yeah, I'd
is,
say from
is
that
to me,
wall-
you're not, we can't say, hey, put screening on RA
Yeah,
property.
it's probably like 20 feet from the wall to the drainage.
Yeah.
And the plat is wrong, and it's ironic, faith of the plat. is fucking out, but-
Yeah, I was gonna say, you just bought it 2 years ago, you should have an updated plat.
I know,
So-
I want to make money.
We don't.
Okay, any other
Yeah,
comments?
that's all, that's.
Yeah.
Anybody have a motion they'd like to?
I have a motion.
Yes, sir.
I move that we repeat the decision that we made previously with the addition of appropriate screening between the path and the wall.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just to say, not screen it, just break it up. I think that was Neil's point, is you don't want wall-to-wall
If the
trees, you
discussion is
just want to break it up.
But you're talking about screening with natural material.
We're moving back to, did you listen to the motion?
No, when he said put screening wall, I make clear that it's not solid trees, that it's just to break up the
I accept that modification.
So with a motion and a second, we can maybe talk to our landscape architect here and see if you have suggestions for what might grow.
In the shade, it's tough.
Really.
I think some azaleas maybe might be a good thing to try to repeat through there. You get that Augusta feel too, and they go back there.
Yeah, there you go.
green. I agree. I don't think it should be a solid screen of them. Maybe it's a couple clusters of groups of three, maybe 3 groups of 3, planted along the serpentine wall. Base of it could be a good way to soften that up and provide the screening.
Okay. Any other discussion?
And just be clear, the motion, so it's to remove the outer layer of the green.
No.
No? Yes, I think that's what Bruce is trying to
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, the problem with that is that there's patio underneath it, so, I mean, are you guys
Yeah,
gonna
that's,
dig up my patio?
that's the only green that actually looks like the grass next
I mean, there's
to it.
gravel under there, it's a patio, like, why would I dig up my patio?
That's the best looking.
That's the most realistic looking. I like to call it turf, not carpet. It's not carpet. That's just my interpretation.
The outer fringe of astroturf, what's underneath that? I guess that's what we're
It's
asking.
packed down gravel, it's like a patio.
Yeah, gravel.
It's a very firm surface, it's not all mud, it's, I extended my patio, basically. I did gravel and then the crushed stone, yep. And then I sloped it away too, so that, and it's very environmentally friendly, it drains water through it. It doesn't just sound like some Home Depot, like, it's real stuff that drains water away from it.
I guess I'm kind of thinking that if we provide some screening, then I'm more going along the lines of just leaving it the way it is and not require it all be torn up, just to leave it as is and screen it. So the stuff we had before, that Bruce is now bringing back in, carpet be screened with the hollies, whatever. So now what we're saying is add 6 azaleas and or hollies along the serpentine wall.
What kind of length is it? You were saying 3 clusters.
Yeah, I'd say 9 total
Okay.
azalea shrubs. But on top of that, you said you planted 4 trees and not 5 along your neighbor's
Yeah, I
property
could put another,
line.
I'm just not sure there's enough space, but I'll plant others, just,
So they're dogwoods?
yeah.
Okay. I guess are we suggesting leaving it as is, or you still want to get rid of the perimeter? Because if he pulls it up, it's all gravel.
Well, I think we discussed this previously, and I know it's fresh, but I thought the concept was we wanted more natural around the putting green.
Is there a beautiful picture that shows the hill and like?
Yeah.
So,
I just keep looking at this picture, and what he has there now is so much better.
Oh, it definitely is.
That's what's like,
The part we're asking him to tear up is the part that looks closest to the grass.
yeah, to me, the putting green looks the fakest.
I understand, but the measure here is not what's built.
it's called
And the problem that we have repeatedly is it was done without consent. So then when we're asked to review it and say, well, this is what it looks like, that means we break the first rule, which is look at it as if it wasn't done. So I hear what you're saying, but that's not the way we're gonna look at it.
I feel like I would have approved it the way it's done, without having seen it, so.
I just find that amazing. In the context of Reston doing a whole backyard in turf, which essentially this is, and clear cutting before you've done it, is not appropriate. My panel would typically not have approved this to this extent. The idea of a putting green, to me, is something that somebody can certainly apply for and be appropriate, but when it turns into the entire backyard, the extent of landscaping being artificial turf, the scale of it is not anything I've ever seen. That doesn't mean we can't start doing that for the next generation of Reston. I just don't feel ready to go there yet.
Well, part of Bruce's motion is to remove that outer portion and to leave only the inner portion.
Which is why I seconded the motion.
And to cover that with mulch, natural colored hardwood mulch.
I don't believe we would have approved this in step, and I agree 100% with Bruce. We're sitting here looking at it after the fact. We've got a homeowner saying, you remove it, you've got gravel underneath. It's a sorry place to be. That's why it's best to apply before you build something. But we shouldn't be, people do this unfortunately too often.
Okay, so the last part, or is we're keeping the motion intact. We're adding the screening along the serpentine wall. We're removing the outer portion and asking them to cover that with mulch. The last thing in the previous motion that just got repeated was this be completely removed when and if they sell the house. I can sort of see someone coming along and thinking, boy, that's why I'm buying a house, is I want to have that. So I'm not sure, do you want to include that in your motion or not?
The thought process at the time was that we are faced with the same problem again, that it's already there. So that was one way to not establish a precedent. So that's really what we're trying to establish.
So we're going to leave
Certainly
that.
someone could apply at that point.
To keep it as is.
To keep it as is. But the notion was that it was a precedential value.
Okay. All right, so everyone understands the motion now?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I would just like to say that I would like to think that we can do well enough to be able to review something that has been already constructed as if it's being proposed and not constructed. I just want you to know that.
Yeah.
I can
Yes.
bifurcate the two.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Two opposed, okay. Abstentions? One abstention, okay. All right, it's approved.
All right, thanks, guys.
Mhm.
Charlotte, I expect you to bring my clutter rod.
I have one. It's an antique, but I have one.
Come on, man.
Okay, take care.
Now, there's some things that we needed to discuss, and I only do this so I can drive Tony completely crazy. But
Always appreciate it.
if it's possible to go into executive session to discuss certain personnel issues, is that appropriate?
Yes, per our conversation, I believe you can, but we're stretching the exception.
All right, well, it's up, I sent the letter from Mr. Lynch to everybody.
Do you want,
Then
well,
we go.
we need to make sure.
Well, no, we're not gonna do that, let's just have an open discussion.
Okay.
Back with it. What is now being proposed is one panel meeting and one full board meeting a month. Starting at 6:30, I think we at least held on to that. So that's the same time our board meeting starts, so okay. I have a lot of concerns about this. I understand we've all been beaten to death with the staff crisis, so on and so forth. My main concern is that we were told in one of these meetings that there are like 2,200 applications a year, okay? We're halfway through the year, so that means another 11 to 1,200 applications will come in the second half of the year. So what I'm very concerned about is, in 6 months, that's 200 applications a month. We're having 2 meetings. Normally, we get about 10 applications per meeting. All right, so that's 20 applications we'll see. That means 180 applications we're not seeing. And I don't know what those applications are. I don't know, do they just sit and don't go anywhere? Is staff now going to approve or disapprove everything without the design review board seeing them at all? Or just what's gonna happen?
Well, another, normally 10 or 15 go through consultation 3 times a month.
Okay, the last consultations have been 4 or 5, so.
That's true, but will that still only happen, consultation only be once a month?
That's a good question, don't it?
Because that could be a long afternoon.
Consultation schedule will remain the same, every week.
Consultations will still be every week. Okay,
Yeah,
so
you're
maybe
really-
that's another 40, if we do
Yeah.
10 per week. So
Last
we're
6
still 120 applications that are, where are they going?
Staff was approving them now, since we changed the guidelines, we're disapproving them.
So all of them are within the guideline changes, all those 120?
The highest number of consultation in the last 6 months has been 6.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's not been
We
many.
had some earlier in the year that were like 15.
No, I've pulled all the stats, and so all the way back to, in 2019, there were 2, 4, 1, 2, 2, 0, actually on one particular month, so, the highest number has been 6 in the last 6 months.
Like, I mean, part of my concern is that, this is why I want to have more of a discussion here. When we did all the guideline changes, several of us remember we were all gonna review what was getting approved without us seeing it. And we've now been told, no, we never agreed to that because it wasn't in the minutes. So we don't know what's going on. We don't know what's being approved, what level, and so on. And it's, I mean, part of all this is to help you guys, you know, and I'm not saying this, I'm not criticizing you, but we're sort of here, A, to give service to our members, which I think is gonna be severely restricted for the next 6 months. And it's because we're all in this together, we got this mess. And hopefully we can somehow get out of it by, I was hoping by September. In fact, Kathy Baum, sitting next to me in that meeting last week, said, hopefully by September. Well, not according to Hank's letter now, it's gonna be January before anything's gonna happen. So I don't know if some of the other things we suggested, like coming in and doing consultation, which we all volunteered to do, might help with the training. That wasn't addressed. I don't know if that's still something y'all want us to do or not.
I personally like the electronic review, I think it's, a way of the future, not
We were
using
just
them,
hoping to
and I.
take less of your time if we could just come in and look at the raw thing and say,
Yeah, and-
yep.
I mean, honestly, less than 2% of the recommended decisions are being changed. It takes additional staff time for us to sit down while you guys go through the applications and provide you the support with the books. So I'm not sure it's gonna help us. in
Well, the
terms
idea
of-
was it would help with training. Like if
Yeah.
I came in, you got a stack of applications, and you're gonna figure, well, these are gonna go to consultation, this other stuff, and I can sit there with a new person and say, this is how we would do this.
Yeah, we do
But there's no
training
one
a
sitting
little
with it,
different.
or is there? I mean, that's why we suggested it.
Yeah.
If it's not helpful, then fine, heck with it.
I appreciate what you mean by this, and especially with, your length of time you've been doing this, it is helpful. But when we're only looking at a couple of applications, I don't see where it's a good use of your time or ours.
Okay.
What puts an application into consultation?
What is an application?
No, what puts it into consultation? I realize it has to go to panel or the board if there's an affected party.
Yes.
But at what
The
says
design
the staff
guidelines-
can't do it, and
Yeah,
why
the-
does it go to consultation?
The design guidelines spell out which applications go to consultation and which can be reviewed with staff. A lot of grading, applications will go to consultation, some landscaping projects go to consultation. We've been trying to push some of those landscaping down to consultation and not put them at panel as well, unless there's a lot of lighting involved. Tenant signs technically can go to consultation meeting. So it just depends on how the guidelines written and what was approved.
Could I ask clarification? What I understand is that to change the way we do things, it has to come from DRB and then get approved by the RA.
In terms of guidelines, yes.
In terms of guidelines,
In
what,
terms of the process, having just looked at the deed, Reston deed provisions, the process, it seems to me, begins here and gets approved by the RA. And where we are, as I understand it, is we have made some adjustments and to address concerns even before the current situation. So my question is, are we being asked to change what we are currently the guidelines or no? If we're not, then I don't know how we're going to manage unless we change the guidelines. So I'm a little confused about the chicken and egg problem.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, that's kind of what I was alluding to. When, if we have 3 panel meetings, I'll make the math simple. Say you do 10 applications at each one of those. Now we're having 1 panel meeting. What happens to the other 20?
We're actually limiting your panel meetings to about 8.
Okay, I'm not arguing
Less than
numbers
that
here, but if
sometimes.
it's 8, it's 8, 8, and 8. So
26 is still a big number.
There's 16 applications that we're not seeing every month
Well,
that should have come to panel.
no,
What-
we're not omitting anything.
So we'll get all 24?
I think the application review would slow down somewhat. I think what we're saying is in the proposed schedule between now and December, I mean, we're hoping to be able to add back meetings in the mix before the end of the year, so certainly sooner than later. All we're asking is for a little patience for us to get people trained and ready to go to meetings.
No,
I could actually come and sit and do another meeting, but I don't have the bandwidth to get the applications reviewed and do decision letters, do meetings and all that. So adding a meeting that I can sit at would mean for me to bring a pile of applications in front of you that haven't actually been reviewed and then not be able to issue minutes.
Yeah, no, I
So-
understand that, but my question is, if it's even 5 applications per panel meeting, whatever it is, that's the 1 meeting we have, we'll see those 5, maybe 6 or 7, if you're gonna throw some more into there. That still leaves anywhere from 10 to 20 that we're not seeing. And what happens to those? They're not gonna sit there waiting another month, because our members will go nuts.
Well, I think we
So-
would rather that they could be reviewed at a consultation level. That would be preferable instead of them just sitting. Because otherwise, yes, they may have to wait until the next meeting.
So I've been waiting to hear this. I mean, Richard keeps saying that things aren't going to get gotten to. Things aren't going to be gotten to. I had assumed that the agendas would be what they need to be for the single meeting that we're having. Are you going to limit the agenda and just have 100 applications that didn't get heard by the end of the year?
We have to limit it to some degree. We also take into consideration the contentious ones that have multiple affected
Exactly.
parties and how long they take.
Which makes any meeting
So,
run.
we, even in the past, have done that with some of your agendas to make sure you're not there for more than an hour
Okay.
and a half to 2 hours at the very most. So that would still be, we'd have to go higher, obviously.
So how are we doing this? I'm not clear either. If the agendas aren't being made longer,
They are gonna be like, they long, they have to be. So if your typical meeting was 8, and we put 15 on it, let's call it a number. Based on the criteria of each application, we may have to pull it back a little, maybe we can add a little, but we have to make those calls as we're looking at each and every agenda as separately,
and then, so you're doing what? You're just,
limiting
no, but how do you do that?
carefully, as
Because
carefully as we
it's
can.
required to come to panel, that's why it's there.
Correct, so they're going to have to come to panel.
But you're not letting them because you're limiting the agenda. So how does that
Well,
work?
they'll be delayed slightly.
With more consultation.
If that's happening each month, then it just seems so untenable. How does that work?
Well, if we start at 6:30, it depends on how late everyone is comfortable with staying and how many applications we can place. We have closed out July, or is it July? Yeah, at 15. So there's a good test to see what that looks like. We're working on August 6th right now. We just started signing those up. So we're not closed out there. We've got some room to play with. And it depends on time, what kind of time can we start,
We'll just,
as to how.
Well, and it's not just us, what time do we end, it's how long can the poor people sit on there waiting their turn.
Another
You
thing,
have to consider that.
another thing we're asking is asking if they can come in an earlier time as an option, and also whether or not they would be comfortable with you reviewing this application without them being present. A lot of people don't really want to come to a 7 o'clock meeting.
well, listen, you have to be real careful with that, because I don't want to change the process.
Well,
And that totally
I
changes the
understand, but we're
process.
just trying to accommodate a situation right now.
Yeah, no, I understand.
We have scheduled vacations that we cannot change. This month, we have scheduled vacations in September that we cannot change. So we have
Yeah,
a
no.
problem.
I got all that. We had meeting after meeting, I got all that.
All right.
I still go back to what I was asked, what Neil's asking. We're still somewhere between 8 to 12 applications that would have come to a panel that aren't coming
Well, I
every
think
month.
they're just getting rolled over. They're just saying, they're
But
gonna have
then
to
those
wait.
people are gonna have to wait 2 months to be heard. Is that what?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get an
That's
answer.
not gonna be the
I
case.
mean,
We're not arguing. That's
Even
what I'm
with,
saying.
even with
Where
my
do they
own
go?
application,
Do they
I had to
just
wait,
disappear?
even my own application, it was a holiday, so I had to wait an extra 2 weeks until the next
Okay, but now you have to
consultation.
wait 2 months.
No, well, mine was that consultation, but what I'm saying is, I don't know what the law is in Reston on how long they are allowed to wait for an application, but
30 days, I think the governing document said.
60 days.
60, yeah.
So,
No, I'm not arguing with anybody. I'm trying to
Yeah.
find out. There, with 3 panel meetings a month, we did X number. We have 1 panel meeting a month. We're gonna maybe double it up or something. It seems to me, I'm just worried about the process, okay?
Right.
There's a bunch of applications that we're not hearing. And if staff's gonna deal with that and make decisions and send them out so people aren't waiting 2 months, I wanna know that. I don't wanna see those 8 things coming back.
If they're coming to panel, yeah, they are allowed.
Charlie, hold on, calm down.
They're not empowered to do so. Staff will do what it has been doing, what the DRB has empowered.
Okay.
DRB retains its jurisdiction. All that's gonna happen is you're gonna develop a backlog. And we're gonna need to make sure that backlog gets no longer than 60 days to comply with our governing documents.
Okay.
But what used to get turned around in a month is gonna take 2. But the DRB is not in any way, shape, or form, it has to affirmatively give away its power to the staff.
Okay. Yeah, I just,
There's not gonna be any applications being processed under the table, if that's kind of
Okay,
what
so
we're.
say-
You're still gonna see the applications you
okay.
need to
Let's
see.
say, all right, July, so we got 8 carryovers from July. And you get a whole bunch of applications, so the August meeting is filled up with 15, but those 8 are still floating from July. Are those 8 gonna go to the August meeting, and then you're gonna add to that? And then the 16 that don't get heard in August are gonna get bumped to September, and this geometric progression here, that's what I'm concerned about, is something's not gonna get heard, because we're only having 1 meeting. What happens to it? And if it starts snowballing, we're gonna really get wiped out.
We had similar situations in the past. I've been training somebody each year for the last, 3, 4 years, right? We've had to let go of meetings before. We have done a similar situation like this before.
Yeah.
And in November and December, we only have the 2 meetings anyway. That's our normal schedule because of the holiday season. It always is a conflicting moment. And September is usually dying down as well. What we did in the past, we kind of got to that place where we weren't meeting 60 and we had another special meeting. So I think that we need to be open and we could potentially keep that on a calendar as a fallback moment should we need it, and then we'll find a way to staff it.
All right, well, let's see how it goes then.
Are we allowed to say, as this board, that we'd see 20 applications during a panel in order to help out during the interim process if we all agree to? I mean,
Apparently, we don't have much say in any of this, just to say.
Yeah.
I mean, it's whatever staff will accommodate. just
could
to say.
staff accommodate 25 applications
I
in
would
a panel
encourage us
meeting?
to run longer meetings.
Yeah.
And not
Yeah.
develop backlog. But again, it's whether or not you can get someone to the meeting, and I get that you can't. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. But the thought of rolling 8, which, as Richard said, becomes 16, becomes 24, I don't know, just maybe we've never talked about it before, and it happens all the time, and we're just not aware of it. But when we talk about it, it sounds like we're gonna have some people that are really pissed off about design review if it takes them 3 months to be heard.
We personally don't want that.
By December.
Yeah.
So I would say again, from my perspective, I'm certainly happy because of the situation we're in to meet for a 3 to 4 hour meeting when that comes up once every 3 months for me. I mean, because that's where we are. I don't think it's proper to be rolling people over in banks of months to be heard.
Well, the reason we had asked for the 6 o'clock start time is for that reason, is to add more items to the
I need
agenda.
dinner if I'm gonna be here for 3 to 4 hours. I'm not coming at 6 if I have to get dinner first.
I understand that, but I just want to say that that's the reason, is that we wanted to accommodate more items on the agenda. And if 6:30 is the time, then that's fine. And if
Yeah.
we have to run a longer meeting, then
Yeah, I
that's
think
fine.
6:30, we've had historically more discussion about starting times. We had, when I first got on the board, we started at 7:30. Everyone was assigned a time in 10-minute increments. And by the end of the first 40 minutes, we were through 2 items, and the guy that was there for the 8:15 or whatever the heck it was had to wait. He was like, hey, it's my turn. And 45 minutes later, we finally get to him. So we got rid of that and just opened the meetings up to be, you come at 7 or whatever, you'll come at 7:30. We then changed it to 7. Somewhere along it, because it did what we said, lengthen the meeting a little bit, and that was fine, because we had to accommodate the applicants as well as the members of the board. Moving it to 6, I think, is nearly impossible. If half the applicants work in DC, how are they gonna get here? I mean, I know we're trying to accommodate you, but you gotta accommodate the board and the applicants. We're trying to do what we can to accommodate you guys, staying late. And I would rather stay until 11:30 or midnight, because we used to do that instead of starting at 6. That's just common sense as far as I'm concerned, so people can get here. So,
Well, this isn't, I don't want this to sound like this is all about accommodating us. And, I mean, we've polled several members about the earlier start time, and everybody was more than willing to come earlier. So we have asked, we haven't just made that determination on our own as to whether or not people can come earlier. I think this is not the ideal situation, and nobody wants to be in this place. We're just trying to find solutions. That's all. And we want this to be a temporary, situation that we can get by to get to the finish line. That's all we're trying to do.
We're arguing over stuff that's, I didn't see the email today, but I have a gist of what's going on. And it seems like there's been a meeting of the minds on the start time. There's been a meeting on the minds on what's, what RA can provide in terms of support. Neil, I'm happy to talk to Hank about dinner if we, you guys want to run it longer.
he's kidding.
I'm not kidding. If I'm gonna be here till 11 o'clock and I'm working until 6,
But you can hardly eat in front
Well,
of.
the letter from Hank didn't address the start time. It just says July 9, July 16th, and so on. I think we've been talking about 6:30 or not giving up 7 o'clock for a long time. So I think that's everything else this board has asked for, we haven't gotten. Okay, the number of meetings, the starting time, and so on. We understand we got a problem. I think it's a minor thing to say, let's start at 6:30. I think that if we took a show of hands here, I think most of us would say 6:30 is better for us. And I'm glad you talked to some applicants and they think 6 o'clock's fine.
Yeah, we didn't have any pushback from anybody about
Okay.
starting at 6:30.
But we don't. We think 6:30 is fine and we'll stay later. Now, we have another problem, or not a problem. How are we gonna do this? I assume is the first Tuesday of the month is the one we're gonna have. We can just let Neil's panel do all of them until December, which I have no problem with.
the schedule was emailed.
Because you're the volunteer for the missing person on our panel anyhow, right?
That I didn't get.
You can rotate your panels, or we also have one panel that's missing a member, so you could.
That's Neil's panel.
So you sent the schedule this afternoon, right? No?
I sent the calendar, an updated calendar, and I put it in your Dropbox as well. Yeah.
I didn't see
Everybody looks like they have 4 meetings between now and the end of the year. Is
You
that
still have
true?
your consultations every week.
We're gonna have 6 full boards and 2 panels each. Right?
I didn't see a difference in this, I mean, I see my panel meeting still meeting at the end of the month.
No, it says con only at the
Okay.
end. I can go through
My
and
apologies.
put a
No.
cross on those to make it a little more clear. Would that be helpful?
No, it's my bad. I just
Okay.
didn't read it
It
thoroughly.
was so in draft form, I didn't want to change it too much.
But so we're all understanding that on July 9th, Neil's panel with someone to sub, gee, I wonder who that will be, does that one. August will be my panel, or Nick's panel, rather.
No, I have July 9th as the green panel, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the second meeting is canceled. That's.
I thought you were the first Tuesday of the month.
July 9th is the meeting that's staying.
It's because there's the holiday.
That meeting has already been established at this point,
No,
actually.
that's
with
fine,
the
but
agenda.
which panel?
Green.
The green panel
Green
was.
panel.
Names, I don't know who.
Nick,
Oh,
Richard,
it's your
Bruce.
panel.
That's yours.
Good.
Nick, Richard, Bruce.
Yeah, it's your panel.
So we're not able to discuss this without calendars in front of us.
Yeah.
You have a calendar in your Dropbox.
All right, so
You
what
have
we're
it
saying though
device?
is,
No, it doesn't.
see, this gets, no,
I'll be here when the time comes.
I'm just trying to figure out how we're gonna do this. If we're starting right now, what I was thinking is, the first month, our first panel, which is Neil's panel, does it. What you're saying, our first month, our second panel is gonna start.
Yeah, because
And
it's
then we're
already,
gonna go to our
it's already
first panel.
established, it's already
Then we're gonna go
closed.
back to our second panel, then we're gonna,
August 9th is where we're gonna begin with.
August 6th.
Or, I'm sorry, 6th, where we could possibly begin to add more applications. Now, we have a 2-week lead time anyway for your meetings in order to process your packets and to cut off, and so especially with all these applications, we're gonna need time to go through them
Okay,
all with
but
everyone.
just to clarify,
Okay,
July 9th, my panel will be there. Who's August 6th?
Neil.
Neil's panel?
Neil,
So then September 10th is Ken's?
September 10th
No.
would divert back to
It's green.
green.
That's me again? But
It
Ken hasn't,
should- it
Ken
should
hasn't
be
had a
the-
meeting.
Boy,
I've
gotten a good
That's what I'm asking.
So we can change, we can
No, we
change
don't have
the
any
application.
panel meetings.
That's
We
okay.
change it,
Yeah,
right? That's
I
what I'm
got
asking.
I got 3 consultations.
That's what I'm saying, if the first month is our first panel, Neil. Second month is our second panel, Nick and us. Third September meeting is Ken's panel, so
That's the way it's
that, otherwise, I don't understand. You know,
It's just gonna be, second, first, and third,
Okay.
because of the holiday.
Yeah, but it doesn't
that's
say
all.
that on the calendar from what I'm understanding.
I think really all we need to do is switch September and make the green panel blue, and then you've got red, blue, and it's all shared right in there.
As long as all 3 panels, so
Yeah,
every,
I can work a
We're good.
rotation on the color panels, and I can revise this and send it out to everyone
so
tomorrow.
that's gonna go
to see
green,
if there's
red,
conflicts.
blue, green, red, blue.
Yeah, so would that be okay?
Except the October thing is October 1st, that normally would be Neil's panel, so.
Yeah,
You'll work it so-
I'll have to change it.
Well, that
I
would
think it'd be easier
That
if
would
you-
be correct.
I just think it'd be easier if you started the July meeting with Neil's panel, mine in August, Ken's in
It's just-
September,
it's
and then
already
repeat.
established.
But
You don't have a calendar in front of you, it makes sense.
I got all the dates right here.
There was never a meeting on July 2nd, that's the point.
There really wasn't.
Yeah, but we're starting a whole new thing here.
No,
So it just starts it out of sync. All right, I give up.
You'd be here.
I give up. Just give up.
You can give up totally. We have-
Can I just say one suggestion that I had, because I liked what I think Nick suggested about kind of a tag-in kind of thing in these longer panel meetings, where if we do have a 30 agenda where, you know, you do let those applicants and maybe a panel who says, we can get here at 6, we go for the first hour slot, then the next panel comes in from 7 to 8, does the next 10, the applicant knows to come at 7, because that's when they could potentially start, and then the third thing starts at 8, and that's when the next set of 3 come in and tag in. Potentially, I'm just saying for the backlog time, if we could still review all of the applications, just still once a month, but it's, that way one person or 3 people aren't sitting there for 3-4 hours. It's just an idea. But
I heard a suggestion in one of your meetings about going back to a timed agenda, and I don't know if we should.
yeah, it's not necessarily a timed agenda. It's just more of, I know Ken and I's panel and Jason. You know, we haven't met in a while, but we usually can get through an agenda in under an hour. I mean, it's usually pretty.
Because you have twice as many applications.
Right, but what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying, then the next people tag in, we say we can all get here at 6, we show up at 6, we do our panel.
That's an insane idea.
Like,
That
enjoy
means
your
all
evening
of us,
off when you have
every
it.
time we have a panel meeting, we're all on the hook.
Well, I mean, right now, I don't have a panel meeting at all for the next
Enjoy
future.
it.
On that first time
I
Neil's
didn't
panel,
volunteer to sit here and not get to
no,
have
wait,
review applications.
I don't even have a calendar, but I got a deal.
No, I have 3, so I'm good with that.
Okay, the first time Neil's panel meets, which is August 6th, why don't you sub on that instead of me?
Perfect, awesome.
Perfect.
So,
Baby, I like the way
so
this
I
works.
know that would be painful to sit and hear the old fogies here talk about the way it used to be all the time.
The good old
Say that.
We get reprimanded on that from time to time, so I apologize, but it was time slots for years and years, and it did not work. You
That
know
was
how
my
these-
dumb idea, I'm
Some of
sorry.
these agendas go super quick, others take longer than you think, you never know. We found we could be in and out of here much quicker when we removed the slots. We were sitting there waiting
Yeah.
for people to show up.
That's fine. When I wrote that email earlier, I wasn't sure that everyone was okay with, if we're gonna knock out 25 in a night, then if we're all in
And I
agreement.
wasn't saying time slots, I was saying basically 3 separate meetings, essentially.
I had assumed that some of these, and I hate to say this because you know what I think of it, but I had assumed to help out, you would push more things to full board as well. Although we saw tonight how well the full board does with a small backyard type of application, it tends to be a lot of opinions on not that much to talk about. But that's another way to keep the agendas manageable. I mean, we could have run through 3 or 4, and if you look for the items that are likely to end up at full board anyway, you know, it kind of gets you going.
Yeah, you
through it.
probably know
Got
which ones are
sense.
gonna be contentious
So
just
just
from.
in terms of scheduling, I would push some of the bigger, more contentious things.
Yeah, push them to us.
And then they don't come back, so that saves you the following appeal.
Can you escalate something to full?
That could be a problem.
Go fairly simply for the most part, because they're well put together and well prepared.
Well, again, there used to be a lot more on full board agendas all the time, and then we sort of got to where it was mostly commercial and redevelopment.
Slower this year.
Well, and that's always scary.
That's not a good thing.
But can staff deem something to go full board?
Be on the Wall Street Journal about how the applications.
Anyway,
the rest
can you
of the
deem something
association-
to
To wrap it
full
up,
board?
I can see by the clock on the wall, it's
It's
now,
1:30
it's
already.
2:30, so.
Bars are closed.
I mean, we could do that, but I,
No, I think we're going along with everything, except the 6:30 start time. I guess we'll start July with our panel,
At 6:30.
it's 6:30. August is Neil's panel, September is Ken's panel,
I can't wait. You said September?
Yes.
You have to be there when you only get
and
this.
Mike's
once
gonna
every 3
sub.
months.
Heaven
Neil's
forbid I
panel.
miss that one.
Mike has missed coming to these
Never hear the end of it.
panels so much, and Neil's gonna teach
Let the
you
young-
about solar
Let the
panels.
young guy do some work.
Solar panels.
You guys just
All the
sit
solar
there
panels
and,
go to mine, yes.
and manage, and I'll do the work.
can we get a motion on some of these changes of procedure so that we're all in agreement and I can put them in the minutes?
Okay, I'll make a motion that we're revising our meeting schedule to be panel meetings. I'm not gonna read all the dates,
I got
but
it.
they will start on July 9th, I believe, with Nick's panel. The August meeting on whatever day that was, August 6th, I think it was, will be Neil's panel with Mike has volunteered to be the sub on that panel already.
Right.
September meeting will be Ken's panel, and then starting in October, we will repeat that, my panel, Neil's panel, Ken's panel. That'll get us to the end of the year,
Yes.
Hopefully we do.
okay?
Do I understand this is a temporary adjustment? to our
Absolutely.
rules?
This is only temporary until they have so much staff, they don't know what to do with them,
Wait, not that long.
okay? I need a second for that motion.
Second.
There's a motion, a second. Any further discussion?
Did your motion say that this could be moved up if we did find trained staff in time to support meetings?
It is a bit, okay, we'll add that to the motion.
And it includes the
Charlie
6:30
says this is
part-time.
temporary only until such time as staff has been replaced and we can go back to our original schedule.
Do we want to add something about I personally am okay with adding where if backlogs, to avoid backlog, willing to review as many applications as needed that need to come to panel to not have the backlog, that is assumed, I guess?
Yeah, well, it's kind of, that's staff's
Okay,
issue.
okay.
Gotcha.
Okay, need a second?
Second.
There's a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Anybody want to quit?
Nah.
And we're still looking for somebody. And just a slight mention here, we need to somehow find other members here, and we're looking for diversity. And I've recently had a lecture from one of our members about diversity, and I don't know how we accomplish that, because we can't get anybody to,
Period.
yeah. But, you know, we need to, let's see what we can do. I mean, I feel like all the guys in the Senate that are all old and white-haired, you know, deciding women's rights, and I don't.
Well, thank you. I think you were just overruled.
I was just saying, we voted, we're done, thank you.
No, you better attend the meeting.
Adjourn?
No, we just did.
Motion to adjourn?
Do you have a
Oh,
motion?
a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
See you tomorrow.
Yes, sir.